Hi. Hey, it's Sunday. And my goodness, where did last week go? It just happened in a blink of an eye. And we are already heading to the end of January. I don't know what has happened with the time. I mean, seriously, I sound like one of those really old farts who are talking about, well, time just happens to go quickly. Do old farts say that? I'm not really sure. Hey, I wanted to share with you just a little bit about where some of my focus is right now. I don't usually do this, but I chose a word for myself for 2021, and that word is play. And I have a couple of friends who use words as their intention. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try this on for myself. And I'm just going to have one word for the year and see what happens with it. And play was important because 2020, I did not have a lot of play. I had no, well, that's not true. I just didn't have a lot of play in my life. And which is strange because I had a time in my life when my whole world existed in a bubble of play. I mean, all I did was play. I remember a specific time of living on a cruise ship for 5 months. I was an entertainer for Second City, which is an arm of comedy. They do sketch comedy. And all I was doing was living on a ship in the Hawaiian waters. So we would never leave the Hawaiian waters. And every day I'd wake up and go explore another Hawaiian island. And then I would perform 2 nights a week. And I had a cast of people around me that I absolutely loved. And life could just not have been sweeter. I mean, all I was doing literally was play. It was great. But I also recognize that too much of a good thing is not a great thing. And there was a time that I was doing another contract with Second City where I spent 8 months on a cruise ship. Ay, 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 ay. And it can be a great thing, but I just reached maybe my deepest depth of depression living on that cruise ship because it truly felt like a Groundhog's Day. Like every day was just the same over and over again. And we were cruising in the Bahamas. So from New York to the Bahamas. And it was like a 7-day cruise. And it was just literally miserable, miserable because it was just the same thing over and over again. And it was wintertime and it was cold in New York. So we could, have like 5 or 6 hours off the ship in New York. And then we'd cruise down to Florida and then see a couple of Bahama islands and then come back up to New York. And it was just over and over and over again. And boy, oh yeah, right, Jen, it was the worst. Jen, were you on that ship? You were on for part of it, right? Yeah. And I stayed for another 4 months on that ship. Ay, ay, ay. And I really, truly felt like the deepest despair on that. And I was just reflecting as like, there was a time in my life where I had just nothing but play. And it was times were so joyful. But for me, what I ultimately realized is that if all I have is play, that isn't good for my psyche. And so when I left Chicago to come to LA and I kind of stopped doing that, stopped performing altogether, and I dove deep into coaching and speaking and building a business, I really found that I had just cut off all my sense of play. And it really took a toll on me specifically this last year, and my heart longed for more play. And I created some of that with that storytelling show that I started until it became such a burden. Jen, you know this, of producing a show. Like, you work so hard to have that 1 hour on stage or that 90 minutes on stage, which is just life-giving. But the work of that leading up to it is just really hard. And you're doing it just so you can have that hour of play. For me, that's not for you. That's how I was doing it. And so I wanted to talk a little bit just about the idea of how do we as adults create more moments of play in our life? Because play is super important. I think, especially for people who are in careers where new ideas are important, or coming up for leaders, having the idea of connecting to a creative force that is different than the force that is created upon us. Through play, we can create through us. And I think it's really important, especially right now when we are just coming out of what I consider one of the darkest times in US history. How do we come back to a sense of play? And so for me, I think part of it is just the idea of borrowing, or going back and thinking about, what did you love doing as a kid? I did some profound work with my inner child, and I've used that work with my clients as well. And they all are just so amazed when we go back and have a conversation with our inner child and we ask the question, what do you want to do for fun? Or what is playful for you? And if you can think back to what you really enjoyed doing as a kid, for me, when I talked to little D, my little inner child, the idea of hula hooping came up, and I realized, oh man, I could hula hoop for hours. I love doing that. And, so I bought a hula hoop, started doing it, super fun. But as a kid, I also really loved biking. I haven't done biking in a long time. I also loved creating shows like improv. I was a born improviser. I was probably doing improv at the age of 5 or 6. I had no idea I was doing it, but I was creating Broadway shows on the front lawn of my neighbors, Christy and Terry's house, and creating musicals, not even knowing what we were doing, but just making up songs. And that for me is real joy. And I haven't done any of that for a number of years. So going back to the idea of, what did you love doing as a little kid? That is often a pure sense of joy for us. And are there ways that you can bring that into your life right now? Another idea is thinking about, Jen, if you're still there, is knowing your type of play, because there's lots of different types of play. And for some people, like really extensive board games are super fun. And for some of us, it is the most dreadful thing in the world. While living on the cruise ship, we used to play board games that required an hour-long discussion about the instructions, which would leave me on the floor just bored to tears. I just wanted to always just play the game, just play the game. And once I got into the game, it was fun. But those heady type of games are not necessarily my go-to. I love kind of in the moment experiential things like biking or like hiking or like being outside. Those are the things that yes, exactly. Catan. But there's lots of different kinds, right? So intellectual play is probably not something that I would really get stimulated by, but a lot of people do love intellectual play. I mean, I imagine Lawrence is someone who really loves the idea, like play is being sit down and creating masterful pieces of music, right? Or word play or something like that. But there's also like whimsical types of play that my friend Jana does such a great thing with in the intuitive treasure hunter. And then there's just lighthearted play, and just knowing the kind that brings you joy is knowing what really does bring you that playful side in your life. And another thing just to consider is, how do we find those really micro moments of play in our lives? I've mentioned it already, how often I will just make up songs. I have a whole repertoire of songs that I sing to my dog, dependent on what the activity is that we're about to do. We have a morning wake up song. We have a feed the dog song. We have a go out for a walk song. And that for me feels really playful. It also feels super playful for me to turn on some music and just have a mini dance party with myself. I don't bump and grind necessarily as much as I would used to as a kid, but finding moments of play with dancing is super fun as well. Anytime you're in the moment and you're feeling like a little sad, depressed, heavy, coming back to those things of creation, of playful just moments to knock ourselves out of that heady space into a space of right here, right now, because that is really what play does for us. You can't play in the future. You can't play in the past. Play brings us right to this very moment, right here, right now, and we are in it, and we experience the here and now when we're in play. And I think the heaviness of 2020 for most of us about the uncertainties about the future and the worries or concerns about the past have really taken most of us out of the present moment for so long. And so this word of play that I have kind of looked to for my word of 2021, as I'm just sitting here thinking about it, more than anything, I think it's a call to the present moment, to experience what is right in front of me for what it is, without worries about the future and without depressions about the past. I think that's what we all need a little bit more of. So, my friends, 2021, I'm looking for more micro moments of play, for connecting more with my inner child about what they or what she wants to experience, and to know that if someone wants to ask me to a board game night where instructions will be read for 45 minutes before we start play, it's okay if I say no. Hey, y'all, that is my Sunday night talk. I hope you have a great weekend or week wherever you are. Stay in the moment, stay present, and find a moment of play. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Bye.